Ryan Blake used to be a committed rescuer. Mechanic officer now separated from the ocean and troubled by his former existence years ago. In a little village, his life was destroyed by the storm, and the lives he couldn't keep him from leaving his professional and personal lives. Yet life has a method of making you start afresh. And now Ryan's life is going to alter due to another storm. Fate once more. Occasionally a second, the greatest rescue of all is chance. Ryan Blake, a 35-year-old man with a strong will as powerful as the unrelenting gusts of the ocean. But there was a soul underneath that hard exterior. 10 years ago, he was damaged by being in the prime of his profession as a rescuer for the Coast Guard, renowned for his making decisions quickly and without fear. His approach to danger was extremely revered. Then everything changed. After a terrible storm-related accident, he lost both a crewmate and that day, they were attempting to save a family. Broke something within of him. The guilt took him over, and he was never able to be the once more. Ryan quit his job and relocated to a tiny seaside village in the hopes of reconstruct his life in this sleepy village. He looked for a new path and took care of vessels in the harbor and created cordial ties with the local. He was liked by fishermen, although they didn't know a lot about his history. Ryan looked for a tranquil existence here, but at night his thoughts was plagued by recollections he was unable to. Ryan Blake was occupied with the escape vessels of the harbor. Similar to any other, he was inspecting the shackles that secured rigging and ensuring that everything was years of safety beside the sea. Had molded, he became a quiet, perceptive man. Didn't discuss him much, but they trusted him for his commitment, and quiet gave his work a feeling of equilibrium. Everyone in the town was aware that when Ryan arrived at the harbor's operations, as consistently a composed and steady leader, that a thin mist hovered over the sea in the morning. The wind changed its course, and it became black. Clouds started to form on the horizon. Ryan saw the symptoms of the sea had warned of a storm that was coming, and repeatedly put him to the test, and he had learned to remain vigilant at all times, although his attention was drawn to something else. Stranger coming toward the harbor, though the woman didn't appear to be from the area. She was obviously from the city. Ryan watched with his eyes slightly squinted. There weren't many fresh faces here, and when an outsider arrived, they typically didn't go long ignored. The woman looked as she moved, but she didn't blend in. Instead, she moved into the crowd. Straight to the harbor center. Ryan sensed this and walked confidently. The woman's visit wasn't your typical one. She walked up to him and said hello, voice kind but confident. I'm here to work on Emily Harrington. Ryan's eyes enlarged slightly as he worked on a project. Briefly before going back to the name Harrington's customary grave expression rang a bell. The name was identical to the man who had initiated an investment project here. He provided a tinier father. Harrington worked on a project here that I've heard others talk about calmly. He continued, some unfinished business. Emily went on to say, yes, my father began tourism and conservation along the coast development project, which is currently my duty to assume control. But first I wish to understand and interact with the natives. Their worries about Ryan's face. The residents of the town had somewhat hardened, always been cautious about outside endeavors. This location cherished its customs in harmony with the water. Significant modifications where people here are rarely welcomed and dislike anyone interfering with the equilibrium of the he responded to the sea in their way of life, and Emily listened intently in a bland tone and paused to reflect. I am aware that I would prefer not to disturb this place's rhythm of life, which is why I need experienced advice, people like you. Ryan, she said earnestly, didn't immediately respond. Instead, he looked out at the clouds on the sea. Horizon were now more noticeable. The storm was swiftly approaching. His jaw little tightened. The storm is approaching, he murmured, coming, and Emily followed him. Look, it's truly evolving that fast, she asked, and Ryan gave a small nod. Around here, the sea suddenly appears, plays according to its own rules. I caution everyone. You ought to seek refuge, he added, lifting, using his voice to urge the others to safe the boats. Emily heeded his advice. She hurriedly and seriously left, out of the harbor, but Ryan suspected he hadn't witnessed her disappearance. Every visitors from outside this town have the possibility of arousing shadows from the he was aware that this storm wasn't just it was the start of the weather of a fresh tempest in his life, which was the town was being approached by the sky, which had the breeze turned to dismal leaden gray, was accelerating. Ryan was attempting to maintain the peace among the people at the harbor, while obtaining additional information from the man next to a tiny tourist boat departed for the island this morning, the man described, but the storm intensified more quickly. They haven't returned as anticipated. However, Ryan inhaled deeply. The island's surroundings could be lethal. His thoughts swiftly mapped in this weather. He went to the others and outlined a proposal, then started giving instructions to get the I am on my way to the emergency rescue boat. After hearing this, Emily, he ordered, went ahead with resolve. Resolutely responded, I want to go with you. Ryan observed the gravity in her gaze, but shook his head, Emily, and explained the circumstances. The SE can turn since they are too harmful. On you in a moment. You can assist further, he clarified Emily by being here. Pause for a second before nodding you're correct. What can I do now? Pointed to the radio stay in when I asked Ryan get in touch with us and let the town know. Sheriff, they must be aware that we possess the Emily. The problem is under control. Started working right away to pull her out. Phone number to reach Sheriff Ethan. It's really, a bunch of tourists are stuck. Due to the storm, Ryan, on the island, and his group are going on a rescue, she said to the sheriff on the phone. Emily, Ethan's tone became serious. Before the storm, we'll increase security, worsens, remain in the harbor, and maintain open communication. He responded as Ryan on his way to the boat. He noticed Emily. Be careful when you pick up the radio, she said. Ryan said with a note of worry in her voice. Gave her a slight nod in acknowledgement of the Ryan began as soon as the rescue boat was prepared. The boat's engine started to cut. The lights of the town through the waves receded as the sea became farther away. The wind howled, stinging, and more tumultuous. Their cheeks as the waves slammed into relentless force. Ryan on the boat reached for the radio and called Emily. We are moving in the direction of the east side of the storm is becoming stronger on the island. After a brief pause, Emily's voice could be heard. Pause, I see. The sheriff has been informed. Control your speed and get in touch with us. Once you're in a secure position, Ryan said, I understand, before concentrating. The waves were returning on the lake in front of them, expanding every minute. But his with a laser-like focus. The lives of people who were stuck on the island relied on this brings his past shadows to light. Errors were always a possibility. However, he had to think that this time would differ from what the storm had swallowed the town whole. The sea and sky appeared to be one. When the waves and wind collided in a tense battle, Ryan's rescue vessel was every impact is like a toy being thrown around, with the huge surf making it challenging in order for the team to remain upright. I was focused on the horizon. Now, every second counts as they battle to arrive at the coast. Tom yelled over the wind is so loud that the waves are getting larger. We must regulate our speed, or Ryan grasped the pebbles as we hit them. Will firmly, his eyes flitting to the sharp rocks up ahead. If we reduce our speed, we'll get disorganized and thrown around. Keep the engine steady out here, he ordered as the dark side of the island as a silhouette appeared. Ryan noticed the boat wreckage close to the coast. It was divided in two and pressed up against the waves of rock battered the remains, shredding them, removing wood fragments, and distributing them. Damn it. That's their location across the sea. Ryan said to himself, boat. Tom inquired immediately if anyone was on board. It's unlikely, but someone might have fallen. Ryan said, looking around, overboard. Swiftly keep an eye out for anyone and that they won't survive long in these circumstances. When they got closer to the disaster, Ryan saw a dim, flashing light. They are on the shore, next to a cabin. However, given the current weather, he considered the boat along the shore was a lethal risk. He reached for the radio and dialed, we've arrived at the harbor and are sending out to Emily. We have detected a signal from the coast. The stranded group that we will be visiting earlier, he could complete a huge wave crash into the boat, causing him to lose his equilibrium. The radio fell out of his grasp and fell into the raging sea overboard. Tom shouted, looking on helplessly as the radio vanished under the ocean. Ryan quickly regained his hold. We've lost the radio while driving, and we're on our own now. Concentrate and move quickly. Get the ropes ready. We can't get away. Too near the coast in case we strike the Tom and the rest of the crew. We're done with rocks. Members uncoiled the ropes in a hurry and threw the first one in the direction of the coast. On the rocks, someone was able to catch it, but the waves were too relentless. Securing the line is almost impossible. Ryan yelled, "Anchor that rope down." One by one, you'll board the boat. No in a hurry. Remain calm and vigilant initially. Survivors started use the rope to slither toward the direction of the boat, each wave that could throw the boat off balance. Ryan, send them plummeting into the ocean, held the wheel firmly in his eyes. Continually letting the waves move, he shouted faster. And then there was a huge wave. The boat twisted and smashed down on them, harshly to one side. Almost capsizing, Ryan spun the wheel in swift response. When accelerating the engine to its maximum power, the boat just leveled out. Although several individuals holding onto the rope, I almost fell into these waves will shred the water. Tom yelled in terror as Ryan's voice broke the stillness of the tumult. But resolutely, if we panic, it will end. The boat shook and moaned beneath the relentless storm attack. But Ryan refused to stop. Absolute lives were his primary focus. Hands, regardless of what he was resolved to succeed this time. The first group entered the boat safely. However, the second group remained trapped. The waves were getting much bigger on the rocks. They tossed the rope again in a more aggressive manner. However, one of the men missed it this time and tumbled down the rocks, slipping into "No, Ryan," yelled the man above the roiling water, was vanishing beneath the waters. Ryan wasted little time in making a momentary choice and yelled out at Tom, "Keep the wheel steady as I enter." "Tom, are you insane? That's suicide." Claimed that if we wait, he will drown. With a snap, Ryan hurried to the side as he swiftly fastened a rope around the boat, his waist before jumping into the sea. His body was struck by freezing water, knocking the waves tossed him out of breath. Him about as if he were a rag doll, almost invisible, gritting as he clenched his teeth and opened his eyes. Catching view of the man, straining to remain, Ryan used all of his strength to stay afloat and swam in his direction, grabbing the rope. Ryan yelled over the waves' roar. The man reached out after hearing his voice. Ryan grabbed his arm in desperation and firmly grasped it. They started the challenging undertaking of swimming back to the boat, engaged in combat with the relentless. Every breath was a struggle for the current. Waves and cold deplete their vigor. With every second that goes by, Tom showed up at the boat's edge, pulling harsh on the rope. Following what seemed to be in for all eternity, the guy and Ryan were dragged, collapsed in tiredness on the deck. "Ryan, we nearly lost you." "Damn it." Tom breathed there and continued to try to catch Ryan's breath. Ryan inhaled deeply and responded, "We got him," with a firm nod. "We must now leave this place once and for all." Both the crew and the visitors were safely on board. Ryan held the wheel tightly for everyone. "Please wait while we return to the." He declared that the engine roared to the harbor. Life struggled to muffle the unceasing howling of the sea, and wind remained dangerous. But the lights emerged on the harbor at last. Horizon, the waves started to calm down. However, the storm had not entirely passed. Ryan continued to drive the boat with focus, gradually over the remaining waves, directing them approach the harbor in a secure manner. Meanwhile, the residents of the town had assembled, their eyes sweeping the darkness at the dock. Abruptly, a ray of light emerged from the darkness, was pierced by an approaching boat. Emily yelled there, her eyes brightening. There, as Drew, Ryan, and his team, as they got closer, the audience cheered. Emily hurried over to give Ryan the applause. As soon as he got off the boat, "We were very concerned when we were unable to contact you." Her expression was a mixture of relief and delight. Ryan smiled slightly at her. "Although everyone's radio fell into the ocean, what matters is being safe," he stated quietly. "We couldn't have done it," Emily said. "Sincerely," she said, "without you." Ryan inhaled deeply and glanced around at the gratitude on the faces of those around. He was the first person in years to the burden of his history no longer felt as great. This rescue was more than simply a win for it. was a pivotal moment for Ryan in the town. He had confronted his anxieties and emerged more powerful on the other side of the storms eventually went by, and the sea was starting to soothe the crew, and visitors who were rescued members were undergoing examinations by the medical staff at the harbor. Residents bundled up in blankets and drank warm drinks in an attempt to get some warmth back. Despite being quieter now, the harbor was bustling with activity as everyone concentrated on making sure the rescue was successful. And survivors were as he walked. Everyone was safe. Through the throng of appreciative towns, he saw Emily walking toward him. Holding a blanket. "You still take this," she said. "I'm soaking wet here." Ryan accepted the blanket when it was handed to him. He said, "Thanks, Emily," with a small smile. His voice was warm and worn out, covering the over his shoulders. He discovered a location on the harbor stone stairs and took a seat. Emily went down with him, and for a while both of them observed the sea in silence. Rain-soaked air combined with a soft wind, providing a brief moment of tranquility. Emily broke the silence by asking Ryan, "What caused you to abandon your career? It felt like you handled everything tonight. So effortless, as if you'd never stop." Ryan let out a long sigh and looked out at he was silent for a while on the horizon, getting his thoughts together before he spoke. "Years ago, I worked as a rescuer in the Coast Guard. I was in charge of rescuing life. But things happened during one mission. Wrong. A boat was struck by a strong storm. We were defeated when we collided with the rocks. I was able to save a couple people. However, I was unable to save them all. So I blame myself for all the people that died that night. Despite the fact that I'd done everything I could wasn't sufficient. I couldn't bear the burden of that shame. So I turned to go from the job." Emily paid close attention to his. The agony of it was still in my voice. She silently nodded at night, but she was unable to conceal the trace of annoyance in her gaze. She spoke softly yet firmly. "Ryan, undertone, I know what happened that evening. Although it seemed to me that you have also been punishing yourself. Long evening. Your abilities and leadership were indisputable. Did you not notice how much by blaming yourself, you gained the faith of others? You've only made the suffering from that night worse." Heavier. Ryan remained quiet for a while, considering what she had said. There was truth and genuineness in her eyes. He could tell she was correct, yet it was still challenging to completely recognize that perhaps you're right after all. Stated. "While some wounds require a long time to heal," Emily leaned in and said softly, nevertheless uplifting, "even if the injuries never completely shut down, you can still recreate yourself. We're this town's heroes tonight. Their regard and confidence in you is it's time to put your skills to work." Not Ryan. Not only for yourself, but also for others. Smiled and cocked his head slightly. He said, "This is where you come in." With a dash of light-hearted irony, Emily's expression became solemn. "Much like mine, a leader is needed for Father's project, and we are creating strategies to safeguard the coastline, protect marine life, and enhance public safety. You've got the know-how and eyesight to direct it, and you also possess a close relationship with the residents of the town. Ryan, you're the ideal candidate for the position." Took a time to consider what she had said. Had not anticipated this for years. Lived a peaceful, solitary existence, maintaining his separation from everyone save the incidents of a new path had opened in the last few hours. Perhaps one he hadn't previously thought of. Emily was correct. "You want me to?" He requested his eyes to lead this project. Displaying astonishment and interest, Emily boldly nodded. "Yes, I don't think I'll find someone better. You demonstrated today that people trust you. You are capable of leading them in this town. We'll continue to live in peace. With the sea will result from." Orion's stare slowly. Leader like you. Changed his focus from Emily to the sea. Wore a small smile. For the first time in years, he experienced a ray of hope for the future. Perhaps it was time to forgive him and begin a new life. Ryan harbored concerns about Emily. Murmured softly, keeping his gaze fixed on my past isn't exactly perfect. See, will I be genuinely desired as a leader? In charge of the town's security? What I've survived if I make another error? For years, Emily leaned in with that terror. Something and softly grinned at her voice. "Ryan, the people are benevolent and unwavering. I already believe what you saw. Today demonstrated that throughout the storm for which they sought you out, direction, you served as their ray of hope. Indeed, you have erred in the past, but you have an opportunity to change things now. This project isn't solely about it has to do with structures or infrastructure. A moment of quiet to safeguard lives passed while Ryan gave Emily a contemplative nod. As this initiative progresses, it will not only help this town, it will enhance the other coastal communities' safety, and residents in the region may not completely recognize that at the moment. But we must make these adjustments in order to maintain you are the one who can keep people secure. Ryan took a deep breath to make that happen. He had no desire to withdraw into the shadows of his past. He remarked, "You're right. Finally, I'll never accomplish this if I don't discover inner tranquility, okay? I will lead the efforts." Project Emily's smile spread across her face. "That's fantastic. We'll create an outstanding group, and this project is the ideal chance for you to begin new," she exclaimed. Ryan quickly took up the project. The initial action was to create a local the Coast Guard crew he assembled had those who were familiar with the dangers of the seas. He enlisted 2 young volunteers from the town and qualified specialists from together. They went outside and started an intense training course. Thorough plans were created for rescue efforts, coastal defense, and preserving the equilibrium of aquatic life. Ryan is in charge of the project. Quickly developed, new safety infrastructures were constructed safely. Maps of the navigation routes were created for vessels, and early warning systems for storms were put into place despite that the residents of the town were originally dubious. Throughout the project, they progressively started to rely on it. Because of Ryan's commitment and diligent effort, in a year for the project attracted notice outside of the town. But throughout other coastal areas, the media and regional authorities emphasized it as an example of an initiative. Ryan and his group received an invitation to gatherings and conferences to exchange their efforts, were even being made to carry out comparable initiatives. Another one day, Emily, Coastal Cities and Towns, was asked to discuss the proposal on a major TV network. Throughout, the host of the interview commended the project and requested that Emily elaborate on the greatest credit for its leadership to the individual who assumed control of the Ryan Blake. Emily, project manager, stated with his kind smile, has come to represent trust for this town's residents we wouldn't have without his guidance. So far, I have never felt regret. Placing my trust in Ryan, who was sitting at the harbor at a cafe, observed the show alongside the towns. He was surrounded by people as the host continued by praising the audience. Turned to face Ryan, interrupted in cheers. Someone yelled, "Here's our hero!" Ryan gave a small smile, but this time there was not a shred of regret or shame in his expression, and he sensed that his life had began to change shape, and he was at last starting to reconcile with his. After a little while, Emily showed up. She approached Ryan at the cafe. She grinned, her eyes gleaming, realizing it's no longer just the town, but the region is grateful, she remarked. Ryan enthusiastically shrugged a little. "For me, a kind smile has always been about ensuring the safety of those present, but it is good to receive this much recognition." He acknowledged that it was odd and cocked her head and shot him a knowing glance, saying, "Don't let it feels weird, but you deserve it, Ryan. Save lives. But now you're refusing to." Ryan took over your previous control. A big breath and looked in the direction of the sea's water was serene and tranquil. He was feeling the same way inside himself now. "Rebuilding your life could be the toughest rescue effort ever," he said. Emily smiled softly and followed his look at her sweet voice. "Yeah, but this time, Ryan, you're not doing it alone." Her statements, sensing the reality underlying he had found a new path and was no longer alone, had created a future for him, reinforced by those around him with assistance from town. Emily and the group he had assembled was on the move, moving together in the direction of a better in the future. Remember to sign up for our channel for additional motivational and fascinating tales. If you appreciated please like and share this video. Comments in the comments section to learn more of our videos by selecting the suggestions at the screens. Conclusion, your assistance is greatly appreciated. You